For well over 1,000 years, one of the ancient world's most popular secret societies had a very simple, very strict rule. You do not talk about what happens in the secret society. And the penalty for breaking that rule was death. This wasn't some minor cult. We're talking about an institution that drew the absolute A-listers of the ancient world. Emperors, philosophers, playwrights, who would drop everything to make a long, dangerous journey. They traveled for weeks, even months, across a world filled with war. Yet they walked in total safety, protected by a sacred truce. They weren't seeking gold or power. They were after a single, life-altering experience, a secret ritual that promised to reveal the divine, connect them with the gods, and completely erase their fear of death. Welcome back to Journeys of Peace. Today we're discussing the ancient beginnings of tourism, which began with something we've discussed before: pilgrimages. See the link to my previous video on epic pilgrimages in the description for additional information. This is the story of the Eleusinian Mysteries, the most revered secret rites in ancient Greece. But it's also the story of how this annual pilgrimage, this mass movement of people under a banner of peace, helped create a blueprint for an idea we take for granted: tourism. It's the story of how a very old secret didn't just shape Western spirituality, but also helped invent the very concept of traveling for meaning. To get a handle on a secret that lasted for centuries, you first need to know the story that powered it. And this isn't just some myth. It's the emotional source code for a huge chunk of Western religion, all starting with a mother's love and her world-breaking grief. The story belongs to Demeter, goddess of the harvest, and her daughter Persephone. The tale, laid out in the Homeric hymn to Demeter from around the 7th century BCE, is the foundational text for the whole affair. Persephone is out picking flowers in a field, a classic idyllic scene which, in Greek mythology, usually means something terrible is about to happen. And it is. With a nod of permission from Zeus, king of the gods, and a notoriously bad father and brother, the earth itself lays a trap. A single, ridiculously beautiful narcissus flower blooms. As Persephone reaches for it, the ground cracks open, and out bursts Hades, lord of the underworld, on his golden chariot. He snatches the terrified girl and drags her down to his dark kingdom to be his queen. Demeter hears her daughter's cry, and then, nothing. She tears off her veil, puts on a dark cloak, and just starts walking. For 9 days, she wanders the earth without food, drink, or rest, searching for her daughter. And as the goddess of agriculture grieves, the world grieves with her. Nothing grows. Seeds won't sprout, fields lie empty, and trees are barren. Famine sweeps across the mortal world, and the whole cosmic order is threatened by one mother's broken heart. Finally, she gets the truth from the sun god Helios, who sees everything. Zeus sanctioned the whole thing. Betrayed and furious, Demeter quits her job on Mount Olympus and walks among mortals, disguised as an old woman named Doso. Her travels bring her to the town of Eleusis, about 14 miles from Athens. While sitting by a well, she's found by the daughters of the local king, Celeus. They take pity on the old woman and bring her home to be a nanny for the queen's baby son, Demophon. Here, things get weird. Demeter grows fond of the baby and decides to make him immortal. Her method? Anointing him with ambrosia and then casually placing him in the fireplace each night to burn away his mortality. As you might expect, the boy's mother, Metanera, walks in on this, screams her head off, and breaks the spell. The child shot at godhood is gone. Demeter reveals her true, terrifying divine form. She's furious but decides to give the people of Eleusis a different gift to thank them for their hospitality. She orders them to build her a great temple. Once it's done, she locks herself inside and lets her grief go nuclear. She unleashes the worst year in human history, threatening to wipe out humanity with starvation. Zeus, seeing his whole system collapsing, finally gives in. He sends his messenger, Hermes, to the underworld to tell Hades he has to let Persephone go. Hades agrees, but not before pulling a fast one. He offers Persephone a single pomegranate seed. The girl, starving, eats it. It's a trick. Anyone who tastes the food of the underworld is bound to it. The reunion between mother and daughter is pure joy, but it's cut short by the pomegranate technicality. A deal is struck. Because she ate the seed, Persephone has to spend part of the year in the underworld with Hades. The rest of the year, she can return to her mother. And so the seasons are created. When Persephone is below, Demeter grieves, and we get autumn and winter. When she returns, Demeter rejoices, and the world explodes with life in spring and summer. This cycle of loss and return, death and rebirth, became the heart of the Eleusinian Mysteries. Before leaving, a joyful Demeter taught her sacred rites, the mysteries, to the leaders of Eleusis. she promised that anyone initiated into these secrets would gain not only divine knowledge, but also a blessed afterlife, freeing them from the fear of a gloomy, shadowy existence after death. This was the promise that turned a local cult into the most respected spiritual institution in the ancient world. The promise of Eleusis was so powerful it spurred a phenomenon: organized, peaceful, mass travel for a purely spiritual goal. While people had always traveled to oracles or local shrines, the mysteries turned pilgrimage into an institution. It wasn't just a trip, it was a 9-day-long performance that began well before anyone saw the sanctuary. Every year in late summer, the call went out. The main event, the Greater Mysteries, started in Athens. They were famously inclusive for the time, open to anyone who could speak Greek and hadn't committed murder. Men, women, and even some enslaved people could participate, though full initiation was likely a privilege reserved for the free and wealthy. The festival began when heralds, the truce bearers, traveled across the Greek world to announce the sacred truce, the Ekacheria. For 55 days, all participating states had to stop any and all wars. Armies would literally halt their campaigns. This wasn't a new idea. The Olympic Games had a similar truce, but applying it to a spiritual journey for thousands of ordinary people was a game changer. It guaranteed safe passage for pilgrims traveling from as far as modern-day Turkey or Egypt. This was the birth of travel protected by a shared idea, a prototype for tourism. Once everyone gathered in Athens, the rituals kicked off. On day 1, initiates were formally welcomed in the agora. On day 2, they all marched to the sea, each leading a piglet. They'd wade into the water and bathe themselves and the piglet, a massive collective act of purification that ended with the animal's sacrifice. The main event of the public phase was the grand procession on the 5th day. Thousands of initiates led by priests and priestesses would walk the sacred way, the 14-mile road from Athens to Eleusis. This wasn't a quiet, somber march, it was an ecstatic party. People chanted, waved branches, and at one point crossed a bridge where masked figures would shout insults and jokes at them. A ritual bit of comedy meant to honor a myth where a servant named Iambe made the grieving Demeter laugh with a dirty joke. This shared journey was key to the transformation. People from all walks of life walked the same road, sang the same songs, and got mocked at the same bridge. For a little while, social status melted away. They weren't Athenians or Spartans, they were all Mistai, or seekers. The infrastructure this required, a maintained road, sacred stops, the security of the truce, was in effect one of the world's first tourism infrastructures, built not for armies, but for souls. They arrived at Eleusis at night, where they held an all-night party of fasting, dancing, and feasting. All of this built anticipation for what was hidden inside the sanctuary walls, within the great initiation hall known as the Telesterion. The one place where seeing the secret would change your life, but speaking it would end it. So what actually happened inside the Telesterion? It's one of history's great spoilers, because for over 1,500 years, virtually no one who saw it talked. Initiates included some of history's greatest writers and thinkers: Plato, Aristotle, Sophocles, and multiple Roman emperors. They all wrote about how it changed their lives, but they never, ever described what they saw. The poet Pindar put it this way: "Blessed is he who, having seen these rites, goes below the hollow earth, for he knows the end of life and he knows its God-sent beginning." A great review, but short on specifics. The secrecy was no joke. The Athenian politician Alcibiades found out the hard way in 415 BCE when he was accused of throwing a private party where he drunkenly mocked the mysteries. The accusation alone was so serious that he was recalled from a major military command. Fearing a death sentence, he defected to Sparta, a decision that had disastrous consequences for Athens in the Peloponnesian War. That's how seriously they took this. So what can we guess? The final rites inside the Telesterion, a massive hall built to hold thousands, were broken into 3 parts: things done, things said, and things shown. It was likely a kind of immersive theater. Initiates sat in total darkness, experiencing a reenactment of Demeter's story. They would feel the goddess's fear, grief, and confusion. Through it all, the Hierophant or High Priest would chant prayers and pronouncements from a central Holy of Holies. And then there was the kykeon. This was the ritual drink, made of barley, water, and mint. That's the official recipe anyway. A popular but still controversial theory suggests the barley may have been infected with ergot, a fungus containing compounds similar to LSD. If prepared correctly, it could have been a powerful psychoactive substance, priming the initiates for a profound vision. It's an explosive idea, and while intriguing, it remains unproven, and many scholars are skeptical. The climax was the things shown. After the darkness, the confusion, and possibly the psychoactive drink, a massive fire would suddenly illuminate the hall. The Hierophant would emerge and in total silence reveal the ultimate secret. What was it? According to the best evidence we have, he held up a single, freshly harvested ear of grain. To us, that might sound underwhelming, but imagine being an initiate. You fasted, traveled for weeks, gone through intense rituals, sat in terrifying darkness, and relived a divine drama. In that moment, the ear of grain wasn't just a plant, it was everything. It was life, death, and rebirth in a single object. It was Persephone, lost and returned. It was the entire cycle of the cosmos held in the priest's hand. In that flash of light, initiates didn't just learn about the afterlife. They felt they had seen its promise. This personal, emotional catharsis was the secret of Eleusis. The mysteries finally faded away in the late 4th century CE, shut down by a Christian Roman emperor who saw them as pagan competition. But their legacy was already baked into Western culture in two major ways. They helped create a model for peaceful travel, and they shaped how we think about personal faith. First, the travel part. Before Eleusis became a major destination, long-distance travel was mostly for war or trade. The mysteries offered a third reason, to have an experience. The logistics required to make this happen year after year were revolutionary. The sacred truce was essentially an ancient international treaty for safe passage, an idea whose spirit survives in the modern Olympic truce. The Sacred Way, with its rest stops and support systems, was an early tourism corridor. This whole model, a pilgrimage with a defined route, a protected journey, and a destination economy, set a powerful precedent. We see its echo in the great Christian pilgrimages to Santiago de Compostela, the Islamic Hajj to Mecca, and countless other spiritual journeys that have defined civilizations. Eleusis didn't invent travel, but it divorced it from war and commerce and married it to the search for meaning. The second legacy is spiritual. The mysteries didn't become Christianity, but they helped prepare the world for it. For centuries, they popularized ideas that were central to the Hellenistic world, but a departure from traditional state religion. Think about it. A personal relationship with a God who suffers, a symbolic death and rebirth, a purification ritual like baptism, a sacred meal, and the promise of a blessed afterlife based on that personal connection. When early Christian missionaries moved into the Greek and Roman world, they weren't introducing these concepts into a vacuum. The audience was already familiar with this kind of spiritual narrative. Early Christian writers even used the language of the mysteries, with St. Paul speaking of the mystery of Christ. They cultivated a spiritual hunger for personal salvation and rebirth that the story of Christ could then fulfill in a new, compelling way. The Telesterion at Eleusis is a ruin today. The secrets in their original form are gone, and yet the core idea is all around us. It echoes every time we travel, not just for business, but to stand somewhere meaningful and feel changed by it. The Eleusinian Mysteries were built on a simple truth, that a journey can transform you. The physical act of traveling can mirror an inner journey from fear to hope, from ignorance to enlightenment. The pilgrims on the Sacred Way weren't just walking to a place, they were walking toward an idea. That life comes from death, that joy follows sorrow, and that a shared, peaceful journey can unite us in ways that power and politics never can. The ultimate secret of Eleusis may not have been the ear of grain shown in a flash of light, but the power of the journey itself. What journeys in your own life have changed you? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this trip into the ancient world, please consider liking and subscribing. It helps us keep digging up these old stories. Thanks for watching.